Hey guys, welcome back. It's wonderful to see all of your smiling faces. Today, we're going to use all the information from this video right here about different ways of creating emphasis and setting a mood for a picture. And we're going to kind of smush all of that together and illustrate a setting. Now, when we say the word illustrate, you all know that a picture book has an author and an illustrator. The author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures. So if we're going to illustrate a setting, we're going to be making a picture that shows where a story is happening. Now, the reason I'm specifically talking about illustrating, instead of just saying we're going to draw a pretty picture of a landscape, is because we want this picture to tell us that story, and we want to use visual elements within the picture to move your eyes through that story. Specifically here, we're focused just on the setting, that's time and place, where and when this picture is happening. So we need to get our imagination rolling and think about some kind of really cool, epic adventure setting. I personally really liked the way that my little distant castle was turning out in the little thumbnail picture from that last video. So I'm going to kind of expand on that theme, that idea right here. And we're going to kind of imagine that in our story, there are some characters who are making an epic journey to a place. And we want to be able to see in this one illustration some of the different obstacles that they might go through on that journey. But we want the main focal point to be on the end place of the journey. So maybe they're going to be going towards a castle. We'll put the castle, remember the rule of thirds from that video. We won't put it right in the middle. We'll put it off to one side a little bit. 1/3 of the way in from the edge of the page would be a good place for that. And since that's going to be our focal point, I'm going to go ahead and pencil that in first. Now, I said pencil, but I'm using a Sharpie. You should probably use a pencil for this. I'm using a Sharpie because it shows up better on camera, but really, you just use whatever you've got. I know we're all stuck at home right now for this coronavirus thing, and you just use whatever you've got. If you got a pencil, use a pencil. You got a Sharpie or a pen or a marker, use whatever you got. Right here, not right in the middle, a little bit off to one side or the other. I like the right-hand side, and here's why. If I did it on the left, see, when we read in the English language, we read from left to right. So I want our picture to read from left to right. And that means the end of the journey should be on the right side. So I'm going to draw this castle here. Now remember, this is a distant castle. We've got to go through this journey to get there. If it's far away, it's going to be very small, and we're not going to have a lot of detail. So we only need enough detail to show us that it's actually a castle. So the first thing that immediately comes to my mind when I think about a castle is that sort of curved gateway, you know, with the portcullis. It's got some lines across it. It's got some lines up and down. That's going to be the sort of gateway, the entryway into the castle. There's probably going to be a drawbridge in front of that, but I'm going to draw the castle first before I draw any of the other stuff around it. I'm going to make maybe some towers, because, you know, every good castle has some towers. And the top of the wall above the entryway. Maybe there's another, you know, this castle right here is really bland. It's really lame. And so maybe we'll have like a tall spire, you know, a really fancy, tall, you know, extra tower that kind of is more important than all the rest and kind of makes it stand out more. That seems kind of cool like that. I don't need to draw any more detail than that. I could try to go in here and draw like individual little bricks and stuff, but this is a distant castle. It's super far away. We're not going to be spending a whole lot of time looking at small details for things that are far, far away. It's going to be blurry. It's going to be like, far away. Now, I mentioned earlier a drawbridge, so I think we're going to need to include in our path. Now, we want our path, like I said, to read from left to right, but it might be a good idea to work from the castle out, because we want convergence. We want a lot of lines that point in towards the castle. And so I think I'll start by kind of figuring, well, if the road is coming this direction, we don't want the drawbridge to come straight down. We want there to be, the road is going to come this direction. Now, I'm going to actually skip a space and leave a space for a moat. I'm going to have, I'm actually going to go ahead and draw that in there, a moat going around and an empty space there. Yeah. And then maybe the bridge is up. So I'm going to just draw basically like a rectangle coming straight up, because that's going to be one of the challenges that our epic heroes have to face as they go towards the castle. It's kind of be the last test, is how do they get the drawbridge down so they can enter the castle. And then this path should get wider as it moves down and to the left. And I'm not going to draw the whole thing yet, but I just want to keep that in mind and maybe kind of mark for myself kind of where the path is going to end on the left side here. That way I just kind of have a little, I know that that's where it's going to be. Just kind of planning ahead, right? Begin with the end in mind. We're beginning with the end of the journey in mind, and we're beginning with the end of our picture in mind too. Now our path is going to wind, and it's not just going to be a straight path, but it is going to, in the end, point towards that castle. But maybe there are going to be some obstacles or things we have to go through. So maybe there's going to be like a haunted forest, or maybe there's going to be a storm, or maybe there's going to be an animal of some kind, or whatever different things that come to mind. Now, don't try to cram everything all into one picture. That's not what we're trying to do here. That would make things really difficult to read. But what if instead we kind of focus on just one or two? Maybe we'll do a dark, creepy forest, and we'll do a really terrifying storm. Okay, let's do the storm first. I'm gonna work that into some convergence as well, because what this is going to do is it's going to make a couple of different kinds of lines. Let's start with some clouds for our storm. We're going to start with a really big cloud. It's going to be cropping off the side of the page. I've got this straight line which is going to pull our eyes in from the left side of the page, and then the cloud is going to bump up and out, fluffy on top, right? So what this does is it's two lines. This line pulls our eyes in, and this diagonal pulls our eyes in. Both of those are not necessarily pointing directly at the castle, but they're pointing close. They're pointing our eyes in that general direction, right? And then maybe there's going to be another cloud behind it that's a little farther away and a little smaller. Okay, this again is getting that left to right movement. Now, to help draw our eyes towards the castle, we're going to do what's called God rays. God rays are those rays of light that shine down from between clouds. So maybe I'll even draw the sun. I'll draw a huge sun peeking out from behind those clouds. and draw these God rays pointing down towards the castle. But on this side, it's going to be stormy. And we're going to have some verticals, some strong verticals that pull our eye down towards the start of our journey. So maybe we're going to have some shocking lightning coming straight down. And I just kind of jacked that up. But that's okay. You know, lightning doesn't actually look like the way we draw it. Also, it does fork. And so these are going to be just showing us just how this journey, this epic journey towards the castle is starting off pretty creepy and scary. And now this path, we want it to kind of start by going into the storm. And that's going to help pull our eyes up into the storm and then through the storm towards the castle. So we're going to pull the path kind of upwards and then kind of flatten it off and smooth it off as it goes towards the castle. Okay, so our path goes up towards the storm, then towards the castle. Now, the second thing that I did mention was that we wanted there to be kind of a creepy forest maybe in this area. Now, this creepy forest might cover part of the path, but we don't want it to cover our end goal. We want to be able to see that castle so we can see where we're going. So what I'm going to do here is have just some tall, dark, creepy, menacing trees. Notice that that's kind of a spiky shaped tree. Spiky shapes are going to kind of give a more menacing feel, and also the vertical nature of the trees is going to make this a very strong feeling. Even though we've got a horizontal frame to our picture, this strong vertical is going to make at least this part of our adventure feel a very powerful. Okay, so there's a tree, and then my next tree is going to be a little smaller than that one, maybe a little farther away. Just like we did in that last video that I mentioned, we're going to kind of make a line where if you draw a line through the tops of the trees, it's going to point towards the castle. And if you draw a line through the bottom of the trees, it's going to point towards the castle. So the way I'm making these trees is just with these loopy shapes. Just like in the video I did yesterday about drawing a forest and a river and stuff. So it's very, very similar to that. Anyway, next tree a little smaller. It's this line here pointing towards the castle. So my next tree is going to start here. And then this line is pointing towards the castle along the top of the trees. So that is going to stop here. Okay. Now, that doesn't have to be all of my trees. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put some other trees on the opposite side of the pathway as well. But they're going to be smaller than this one because they're farther away, right? They're on the other side of the trail. So, you know, they're going to be maybe this big. Okay, so we've got this creepy, menacing, cloudy, stormy, lightning, thunderbolt stuff we got to deal with, and then we got a deep, dark, creepy forest to go through, and then we get to the castle. So this is a pretty cool little setting so far, but if we look at the whole picture, we got this huge empty nothing on this side, and it just pulls our eyes off into nowhere. So we need something in these spaces that pulls our eyes towards the castle. Maybe up here in this area, we'll have like a distant mountain or something kind of poking out from behind these god rays, and there will be sort of a river or stream, or whatever, maybe a waterfall. Maybe there's like a waterfall here that collects and then pulls into this moat. Okay, so we maybe have like a mountain range or something back here in the background. That kind of helps tie in this area, and maybe just because we've got this kind of empty area, we're starting with all this adversity of going through the storm, going through the forest. Maybe in the end we want to have more peaceful. So instead of putting clouds in the sky up here, I'm going to put a couple of birds flying. It's a nice, beautiful day on that side. But that still leaves this big empty chunk down here. Now, in this empty chunk, we got to think about something. I mean, we don't want our adventurers in our story to have this, nice, free, empty field that they could just, frolic through the daisies and get to their castle. No, there's got to be some, they got to face some trials in their story. It's not a story without a good problem for them to have to get through. So on this side, we need something that's going to block their path. For some reason, they can't go this way. Now, it might be tempting to put a sign up that says, "Danger, bears," or something like that. But we really want the picture to tell the story without words, and we want something that will keep pulling our eyes towards this castle. We want our eyes to keep being pulled towards this castle. Every choice we make needs to be, how can we point the eyes towards this castle? So I think I figured out what I want to do. I think this waterfall here is flowing into this moat around the castle, which then flows into another waterfall. So maybe this kind of ties everything together. There's like a cliff, make it jagged and rocky and bumpy, and so we've got this cliff where they can't go that way because there's it's a cliff, and maybe that goes that way, and then there's the water at the bottom where this is the waterfall that goes down to that, the ocean or something. And then maybe over here, a couple extra little trees. Maybe not make them quite so big and dark and menacing. As a matter of fact, maybe just make them kind of point towards the castle. Again? Maybe that's a bit much. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to make a couple of little edits here just to help increase the contrast. We clearly want the castle to be standing out. Right now our forest is super, super dark and everything else is a lot lighter in comparison. So what I'm going to do is really darken up at least the outlines. I mean, I don't want to darken in my lightning. I don't want my lightning to be black lightning. And maybe you do this with color instead of with a Sharpie or a pencil or a pen or a marker or whatever you're using. Maybe you use colors to grays and blacks in the cloud and in the background around this area. Make it really dark and creepy. And maybe some dark greens in the foresty area. Maybe the path is going to be dark browns. And then maybe a white castle with some pale blue light shining through, or yellow even. And but we want this cliff area to be darker too. And maybe this water would be, a medium blue, not too dark, but not too light either. Anyway, so there's lots of different ways you could finish this up. I'm going to have some fun just with contrast with the Sharpie. You decide whether or not to add color, and if you do add color, how you're going to use that color to make the castle and maybe the path to the castle be the parts that stand out, the points of emphasis in our illustration. So I overlapped some trees behind the lightning. I made the outlines of the lightning really dark. I made the clouds dark and creepy. I made at least the top edge of the cliff very dark and creepy. And this does a pretty good job of pulling your eyes up to this corner. Now, I'm still not 100% sure whether I like the lightness of these distant mountains, but if you see distant mountains, they're going to be very faint anyway. You're not going to see really dark outlines around them the way you would with things that are closer up. So it's kind of a catch-22. I could make those darker and creepier, but really I want the end of the story, which is really this whole right area, not just the castle, but the whole right area, to be more light and free. So anyway, it's this dark, creepy area leading into the light area, and your eyes are pulled to this side, whether it's strictly just the castle or just this whole side, by contrast. And then the lines all converge on the castle. Everything points to the castle, except for the birds. Anyway, here's another example of how you can put all those different thoughts together about contrast, about convergence, lines converging, about using the rule of thirds, not putting things right in the middle, not putting things off the edge of the page, but putting it a third of the way. You can use, to some extent, framing here. I've got this sort of line framing around the castle. There's a lot of different choices I made. Vertical things to feel strong and powerful, and lots of things going on here that all work together to give a mood and to move your eyes through the illustration. I look forward to seeing all of your beautiful illustrations and seeing whether you copied mine and followed along with this or made up your own using the same concepts and ideas. And also, I look forward to seeing your color choices, whether you chose to use color or keep it black and white, and if you used color, how did you use it? I look forward to seeing that.